Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of The Journey in Conversation. I've got Jennifer Houle with me in the virtual studio today, and we're going to be talking about the hiring practice. This will be an unconventional show for all the folks at home, not what we usually talk about, but it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Super glad that you are here. So a couple of weeks ago, we did a two-part Substack. We wrote about the hiring process and how it's not really designed for real people and how we wanted it to be designed for real people. He wrote about it from the HR partner's perspective, and I wrote about it from the leadership perspective, and that's what we did. We'll post the link in the show notes to that if any of y'all want to go back and have a read through. But that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed what we did there, enjoyed the conversation, and you must have too, because here we are recording an episode of the show to kind of follow up on it.
Absolutely. No, that was great. It was a wonderful collaboration and lots of feedback, lots of engagement. I think it really resonated to have those two perspectives. Usually we're really focused on just the one that impacts us the most. So to have both lenses on that was pretty special.
Yeah, what I love the most about what we wrote about and what your work really is about, all things considered, is from that HR perspective. You're a very strong advocate for human-centric systems, and I know a lot of HR folks who kind of work in highly structured, little bit repressive corporate environments who are like, no, you can't say anything about like the systems and the company and whatever. Don't be critical. But you're not like that. You're very critical about systems in a good way. How did that come about? Because it's not normal for an HR person to be like, well, let's think about this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I will say the company that I'm working at currently, I'm very fortunate that they are open to these ideas because they've always been there. I just have had to suppress for a really long time, depending on the environment that I was working in, because it's true. There are lots of things that you absolutely shouldn't say. But I think that there's an openness now. It feels like collectively the HR world and, through my network globally is embracing systems thinking, human-centered design. There's a shift. And so I feel like the time is right to start vocalizing those beliefs, those different frameworks. And again, the fact that I have a safe environment to do that in, I'm gainfully employed, I'm very well supported, makes for a kind of perfect storm, if you will, to be able to lend that voice. And then the more I share, the more people I hear back from saying, yes, absolutely. And this is kind of the future of HR. This is the way forward. We've been so anti-human for so long that it's time to flip the switch a little bit. And I will say too, I think that in the last few years, we've seen a lot of HR roles affected by restructures, mass layoffs, and things like that. So it's almost as though the shoe is on the other foot now. HR is finally understanding what it feels like to go through that experience and can, have a different perspective on it and be like, oh, right, we do need to fire people better, more compassionately, more respectfully. We need to hire people better from a human-centric design perspective. So I think that there's a big change on the way for human resources.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've been in environments where HR partners, they're not really, I don't want to say well integrated with the business, but they don't really have a lot of day-to-day contact with functional teams. So the jokes kind of, they've kind of written themselves like, oh, you said that, like, don't tell HR, that sort of thing. Like there was always this, again, a lot of organizations that I've been kind of intersecting with, there was always this mindset of like HR is the police or the teacher with the metal ruler that's going to like smack your hand if you do something bad. And I've always kind of felt that is a bit of a missed opportunity, because if you can have a functional team, a group of people inside an organization whose really main focus and responsibility is to cultivate human connections and cultivate professional development and cultivate the exchange of knowledge and really develop supportive structures around people, that don't exist in those day-to-day kind of like functional teams or environments because it's really not their job, you can build a stronger, more resilient organization. But that attitude 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago was really rare. Like it was non-existent. And I just kind of kept thinking to myself, well, obviously you're crazy and a little too woo-woo. This is not what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's this fine line for HR too, where who does hold people accountable? What happens when people do need to get terminated? So how can you function for the people, but also hold that line? And I'm kind of experimenting right now with some thoughts about, well, what if it's not HR? What if HR is gone tomorrow and it's a new design, it's a new function, it's a new discipline entirely? And if that's the case, then who holds certain things in place for the organization? Does it have to be that HR function? Can HR truly be for the people, like you said, for learning and development, that connector, or can it be someone else? Like, does HR really have to be, because HR, we're not lawyers. That's the thing. A lot of what we talk about in HR, a lot of that like negativity comes from the legal compliance. But sure, you take some legal courses, but you are not lawyers. And so do we have to play that role? I don't know. And yeah, like I said, this is something that I'm experimenting about and have been mapping and writing about what that could possibly look like. What is the future of HR, if there even is one? And is it just another rebrand, people ops or people and culture, or is it a complete shift in what we've known HR to be? So yeah, that's
Yeah.
an interesting thought.
Yeah, you think about too, what's the fundamental purpose of HR, and you can even think about it in terms of like the branding of the function. Like human resources management is all over the place, has been for a long time, right? Like you go to school for human resources management, you get a college degree or diploma or whatever, and kind of start your career. But what if it was human resources development instead of management? Like that one word, how would that kind of shift the focus of the entire profession and like the outcome and the objective of what you're trying to do, right? Like it's kind of interesting to think about stuff like that.
This is exactly it. What is the purpose? What is the point of HR? Like truly, what is the point? I'm talking myself out of a job here, but the when you talk about like the language, I'm thinking about a few Substackers that we both know who write about linguistics and language and the importance of that. What I'm playing around with is the concept of human work ecology. And is that the direction of the new human resources? So it's interesting that you said that about just changing around the wording, because I think it makes a huge difference to what the potential of this maybe new function could be. But yeah, it boils down to what's the point of HR? What are we there to do? Because back in the day, in like the birth of HR, it was to keep people in line. I feel like it's different now to a certain extent. Those in maybe, more archaic organizations will disagree, but it should be different. It shouldn't be just about, keeping people to task, making sure that there's no revolt at work, things like that. But HR would have to overcome a lot to get to that point, to regain trust.
Yeah, I mean, all of the people who are bankers or work in the insurance industry who are watching, like they just clicked out. They're gone. They don't want to hear
Sorry.
about this.
Bye.
I remember hearing a little bit about when I was in university, so a long time ago. There was this concept of integrative HR that was kind of making the rounds in lectures that I would go to, and it was kind of being talked about by the thought leaders of the time, like pre social media era, because like that's the generation that I'm from. What does integrative HR mean to you? Like, does it kind of support what we're talking about, like making this less of a siloed discipline and more of a function that's different and changing in the organization? Like, what do you think about when you hear integrative HR?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that term, integrative HR. So I'm just going to say what's coming to the top of mind right now. But I think it's really, when you think about roles like a human resources business partner, it should be integrated in the function that it's serving. So say it's an
Mhm.
engineering department and you're the HR business partner, it's integrated within that work function, truly understanding not just the business itself, uh, but the work required for that engineering department. So you should have a pretty deep and robust understanding of what it means to be an engineer. What are the requirements? What are the challenges, the pain points? What kind of needs to change? How those roles add value to the greater organization. So to me, I see it as integrating within that business function or that unit that you're supporting. Um, yeah, I that's what I'm thinking right now, but I could be going in a totally different direction than what you were suggesting.
Yeah. It's always I've always been a big fan of, regardless of whether it's HR or some other function in the organization. I've always been a big fan of making teams as cross-functional as
Yeah,
possible, because one of the things that I see a lot in my work is as organizations grow and they staff up and hire under particular departments or business units or groups or whatever, those different functions in the business get a lot more siloed over time. And the stronger that the walls of the silos become with growth, the less the less communication there is between them. So you might go into an organization that has been around for 10, 15, 20 years, and they've grown their headcount from 50 people at the very start to 5,000 people. And over time, like, the communication between, say, a marketing department and an operations department completely like falls apart, except at a couple of like points in the very like senior level of the chain. And it's always seemed to me that HR existing kind of in a silo in an organization, and you have kind of like a pod of recruiters, or you have HR business partners that aren't embedded in teams and specialists and whatnot. That doesn't seem to add a whole lot of value. Like, it seems like it would make the hiring process even harder, because the people who are like really driving it, really helping support it, they don't as well understand the needs of the team that they're placing people into, as well as they could or should. Like, in a small organization where you got 20 people, you have to understand the business,
yeah,
because it's just like you. So that thing kind of like, it gets weird, and it's tough to like get out of that mindset. Like, I'm sure that you've seen in organizations that kind of happen a little bit. Like, are there things that you advise HR folks and business leaders to do to kind of counter that trend of like siloing and whatever?
yeah, absolutely. It's so funny that you say that. I worked in an organization once that had kind of like mirrored units, the same function, but one was for Canada and one was for the US. And the
Okay.
communication was so poor that they were actually submitting the same RFPs for the same work, but they didn't know it. So there was a moment where teams were showing up basically for the same project but competing against each other, and they didn't even know it because the communication was so poor. And again, I see this as a human resources responsibility to ensure that there is cross collaboration, cross communication. um, I wrote about it in one of my Substack posts, this concept of organizations as living systems and just ways that we can prevent these silos from happening. And yes, you do need to have boundaries, but they need to be like permeable. You need to be able to communicate back and forth as needed, and what that could potentially look like. It requires so much self-awareness and ego checks, because I think that's the problem, right? Is that we always talk about how, oh, siloing is such a problem and people don't like being in silos, but I think they do. I actually think that they prefer that. Like when we talk about all these different ways of changing the workplace, I think there's a lot of resistance because a lot of it is checking egos and distributing power a little bit more evenly.
Yeah.
And people don't want to do that. People are not ready for that. So it takes a special kind of organization willing to try out some of these different ways of working, willing to trust human resources ability for organizational design, and even communications to a certain extent. So yeah, absolutely.
Do you think, and this is super speculative question, um, do you think that certain organizations would be better served if they didn't have full-time dedicated HR people, but rather there were blended roles where parts of the human resources function were taken on by people who were also doing other things that demanded kind of complementary skill sets and time. What do you think about that? Because I've asked folks about this, and like I did not expect a question like that to be a lightning rod, but oh man, in some rooms, it's like, you said what now? We shouldn't have jobs. I
Like,
didn't say that.
can you play me through like what's an example of that?
So let's say you've got an organization that is like 50 people, and they have just enough turnover in a functional area. Like, say they've got a sales team, and the turnover in their sales group is such that they're hiring and replacing maybe 5 salespeople a year every 18 months or something like that. It's just a high turnover profession for
Yeah.
whatever reason. So they need the capability to be able to go out and recruit. It's going to be an ongoing thing, but they don't, like, maybe they're not best served by hiring an agency to do that. Maybe it would be better if they had a person in the organization who was like a talent hunter, but also helped coordinate operations in administration or finance or sales or marketing. Like, they were just a very good soft skills type of person. And a part of what they did was go hunt for talent. Like, do
Mm.
you think that maybe the future of HR kind of looks like that for some organizations versus having a department with, a recruiter and an HR business partner and like a people VP or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that does exist for a lot of smaller organizations that,
Mm,
like the whole idea that people wear many different hats. So I do think that certain individuals, that's already happening with them because they have that natural ability, that disposition, that understanding of what the organization needs. But I do mention in that collaborative post that we did that recruiting is its own beast and it doesn't get
yeah.
the time and attention that is required to do it well. And so for that reason, I don't know that that works. I think maybe that person could be the liaison to an external recruiter and give them the details of what's needed, because they have that good insight on it. But I think taking on that role in and of itself, if they want to do it well, I don't think that it's a off the side of your desk kind of situation personally. Again, like I've been in that situation where I'm the only HR person and I have to do all of the things and then we need to fill these roles. And when you mentioned the turnover, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to do
Mm.
it well, to do it thoughtfully, to do it in the ways that we both wrote about in our Substack pieces. So yeah, I think to answer your question, I think it already happens. And I think for that reason, it maybe doesn't get done as well as it could because everyone already has so much to do. And recruitment needs full, full attention.
Let's talk about recruiting.
Let's.
So in your comment on recruiting is a whole different beast. Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Anyone who has been on a hiring committee or participated in that process knows that going out and like finding the candidates is very different from managing the needs and specking out the role, and like it's like your brain has to operate in different ways. But from your perspective, why is recruiting so different from HR, like internal HR? And why should we invest more time in doing recruiting well? Like, what's the trade-off of doing it, the way that you would want to do it to have it be well managed versus, just kind of like, "Hmm, it's
Yeah,
fine."
absolutely. Those are great questions. I think so. The trade-off, I'll start with that one, is that it could be a slower process. And you already hear candidates complain about how long the interview process can take.
Mhm.
And yeah, I read a comment that somebody wrote on this LinkedIn post. There was this big debate. I got into it. I hate fighting with people online, but I couldn't resist. And it was this concept of a CEO made a confession saying that they hire based on gut. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, no, 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 I don't buy into that, don't like that for so many reasons. But somebody made a comment on their post saying, yeah, hire fast, fire fast. And I was like, good Lord, is that what we've become? Like taking all the humanity out of it? Not only is that terrible for the person, the candidate, but it's also terrible for the organization. There's nothing strategic about that. And so, yeah, when you want a more thoughtful process, it does, especially upfront, take a little bit more time. It's a thoughtful process. So maybe you're not hiring as fast as you would like to, but I think when you get a good system, a good process up and running, it actually will, in the long run, be a lot more efficient. You'll have less turnover. You'll have more successful hires. So that's one thing. And why it's its own beast is that was the other question that you were asking, like why is recruitment such a big thing? Um, I think that, especially in this market, you put a job posting and you are getting thousands of candidates. So how are you deciding when you have a million other things to do on your list? How are you thoughtfully reviewing those applicants? If you want to do outreach and, hit up people on LinkedIn, I'm a VP of people operations. So I'm a legit HR person, experienced person. I will reach out to candidates and not hear back, right? Like people aren't really, for whatever reason, responding necessarily to outreach. So you have to be persistent. You have to dig in. You have to kind of, if you see a candidate that you are interested in, that maybe they haven't applied, a passive candidate, if you will, you really have to dig in your heels and reach out a few times and convince them to take a chance on you. And so it's a lot of time to navigate the administrative tasks that come with recruitment, and then the I guess like that go out and get them attitude of, okay, I have to work hard to reach out to passive candidates. But yeah, and I would say again, in this market, if you put out an administrative job, an entry level job, you're talking thousands and thousands of applicants. Yeah, you've got ATSs, applicant tracking software and systems that could possibly do that for you.
Mm.
But those are problematic in and of themselves too. We know this. We've seen Workday and massive lawsuits and things like that. So there's something to be said about the human touch in the recruitment process. I believe in it, but I'm not working in a large, huge organization. So there's capacity as well. But if it is your job, if it's your full-time job, then I think it is somewhat manageable for sure.
Yeah, and you bring up ATS. One of the most common phrases that I hear when discussion around like going to find a job seeking, and and the system is
Mhm.
concerned. People make these offhand quips or jokes about like, oh yeah, no, I applied. It's brass ring, and it's just going into the black hole. I'll never hear back. And it to me, it almost seems like some companies are doing an RFP for these systems, kind of putting them up there, putting them live, but not thinking about the other side of their implementation. So, like, what the candidate experience is going to be. It's like, yeah, we've got brass ring, we've got whatever else. It's there, cool, good, done. But it's total shit when you're applying for a job.
Yep.
Like, so much stuff just gets missed. You never hear back, and you don't know whether or not they received your application. And if it's, 1,000 of those or 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 for a big multinational, there's no way that anybody in the organization is going to be thinking about cleaning that up, right? It's just like, it's too much work. So we've
Yeah,
created automation, but in service of what? What are we serving with this automation? It's not people, right?
absolutely. Yeah. It's all for the sake of efficiency. And I think that it would be really interesting to see some case studies about, the difference between hiring in a manual way, like more analog style versus an ATS, and the outcomes of those hires, the quality of the candidates, how long they stayed, what their onboarding was like, did they have any performance issues? I know that you like, yes, they'll go through an interview process after the fact, but even just screening, what difference that makes. We already know that there are biases. That's a given. Again, that's why there are lawsuits happening right
Mm.
now. So yeah, what if we went back to a more human approach to screening applicants and what that would look like down the road? Um, yeah, it would be an interesting study for sure.
Yeah. So let's play a game. And I'm kind of just gonna like drop this on your lap. I think it's gonna be fun. Tell me to go to hell if you think otherwise. I came across a job posting a couple of weeks ago, and it's for like a pretty serious position. There's experience behind this position. It's for a company that is pretty darn large. We're not going to like name and shame them here because I don't have a lawyer who can fight back. But I think it would be fun for us to go through that job posting and just kind of like pick it apart a little bit and
Yeah, yeah,
say, what does this
I'm down.
actually say? Yeah, your game? All right, cool. Let's do it.
I have
So
not
this
seen
is
this ahead
for,
of time, so this is brand new information. I'm nervous. What if it's the company I work
yeah,
for? What if I wrote it?
it's funny when I kind of came up with this like crazy idea, like let's drop a fun bomb on Jen. I was like, oh man, what if she wrote it? Wouldn't that be funny and embarrassing for me all at the same time? But I really don't think that it's for your company.
Based on what you know of me, I would hope that you'd be able to tell.
All right, let's do this thing. So this is for a job title of Senior Sales Performance Analyst. And it is posted on all of the job posting things. The company works in software development, very specifically Internet of Things infrastructure, data, and development for marketing fluff, marketing fluff, marketing fluff, marketing fluff. But they have customers in North America and Europe, and they work with clients who manage critical infrastructure that typically would be managing their operations with pen and paper. So that makes me definitely think about like a few industries, but I'm not going to tell you or the folks at home more than that because, again, I don't have a lawyer and I don't want to get like cranked at by these people. About the role. We're looking for an experienced senior sales performance analyst to join our pioneering sales quality programs team. The quality analyst will partner with leadership and cross-functional stakeholders to up-level and drive strong sales outcomes. He will support teams in all segments, implementing data monitoring systems, assessing compliance, and using business intelligence to drive improvements on both sides of the customer experience. The ideal candidate has experience in a customer-facing role, expertise in quality assurance operations for technical and non-technical customer teams, and can parse data to identify high-leverage opportunities. You'll join a team in building mode and help create a sustainable quality function and culture. This role reports to the senior manager of go-to-market quality programs and is a part of the revenue operations department. This is a remote position open to candidates residing in Canada. What do you think about that section? What does that like do? Does that set off your spidey sense?
Well, I can't even remember now what you said the title was. What kind of level is this role? Because they're reporting to a senior manager. I know it was sales analyst. What is the
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing that I hadn't caught when I read over this. The job title is Senior Sales Performance Analyst. So you've got a senior person reporting to a senior person, but there isn't like a director level kind of structure in this reporting relationship whatsoever, even though it seems like maybe there should be.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was my first thing is that I thought that you had said, like in my world, in venture capital, it's an analyst is a junior. That's a junior level. I get that this is completely different, but they both have senior in their title. So already I feel like even though one is a manager, that's interesting. I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah,
The rest was a lot of words. A lot of words were
that
shared.
was
Yeah.
that was a lot of word soup. And that's the first thing that came to mind when I read it. I was like, wow, this is kind of a lot of BS.
Was
Like,
it
can you
enough
be a little
words
bit more
that it
clean?
enough words that it led me to forget what the title was? And so, yeah, I would say they could benefit from just, you know, shortening that, tightening it up just a little bit so that somebody reads that and goes, I get it. I know exactly what this role is.
All right, next section. You should apply if. Bullet points, of course. You want to impact the industries that run our world. Your efforts will result in real world impact, helping to keep the lights on, get food into grocery stores, and most importantly, ensure workers return home safely. You have an innate curiosity about how businesses work. One day you'll meet with someone in a waste management company. The next, you may be learning about the inner workings of a food distribution center. Our top sales team members seek to learn the ins and outs of the businesses they support in order to make a larger impact. You build genuine relationships with your customers. The industries we serve have relied on pen and paper solutions for years and haven't been met with the type of technology we offer. Our customers value earned trust and human relationships built over time. You want to be with the best. Company name omitted. High performance culture means you'll be surrounded by the best and challenged to go further than you have before. You're a team player at company name omitted. Sales is a team sport. We help each other out by sharing best practices and focusing on winning as a team. What do you think about that section?
High performance culture is what stood out for me. Obviously, it's going to be the things that are kind of like culture oriented, team player as well. If totally fine. That's very, very common to see. But what does that mean? And how are they enabling you to be successful? And so I think high performance culture is a red flag to me because it just means we're going to ask you to work a lot and have a high output. But again, is the system prepared to support you in that? I would want to know. I'm not afraid of hard work and rolling up my sleeves, but I would want to know, like, what are the benefits? What's my vacation like? Or what is the compensation for this? Because it better be pretty darn good. And same thing with team player. That to me, that can be really subjective, right? Like you could even say we all go for a beer on Fridays after work. And if you
Yeah.
don't come, you're not a team player. Well, I'm not going to go. I don't want to go for a beer with my colleagues after work. I have a kid I have to pick up from school, right? Does that mean I'm not a team player? I don't know. What does that mean? It's very ambiguous to me. And just based on my experience, those two bullet points are red flags. I would want to know more for sure. What are your thoughts on those
The
on
thing,
not
the,
just those?
yeah, so high performance culture, that also sticks out for me.
Yeah.
Uh, anytime I hear high performance culture, high performance team, the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to mind is like, okay, so you've normalized working 12-hour
Yes.
days until 10 p.m. and on weekends and being on call all the time. And you know what? I did that when I was younger, and I was kind of proud of it. Like white dude Protestant work ethic. Like we should all be great workers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like I get it, but it's not super healthy. The other thing that stood out for me in this is that they're saying that the sales team owns operational relationships with customers. For me, that's incredibly weird, especially in an industry and with a product that is more likely than not enterprise grade. right? Because we're dealing with infrastructure type stuff and big organizations. So it's not like you're selling a subscription for $9.99 per month. So
Right.
for having the direct relationship managed by the sales team from, and also like this reporting into revenue operations. So revenue operations being both kind of like customer accounts management, like delivery of the service, and sales of the product. That to me says, okay, so customer management or customer relationships are really sales opportunities, and that's like your focus and priority. That sticks out for me.
Right.
That ultimately does not end in great customer experience over time. It's structurally strange, but it does boost revenue.
Right. Yeah. You know what else I would like to say, because you touch on this too a little bit, like specifically gender. This reads to me as male coded. Like all the language
Oh,
there is
interesting.
super male coded. Like it's amazing how companies do this and they might not realize it, or worse, they do realize it and they're doing
Yeah.
it for a reason. But I mean, we could go into a whole other podcast about those types of things, but the superlatives, the like everything is impact, 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 high performance. It is. The studies have shown that this is specific to male identifying individuals. And so you're alienating a whole, a whole bunch of people who could be applying for jobs like this, because it's not speaking to them. It's not speaking their language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't even really thought about that. Like I read through the language of that part, and skipped over the parts that could be gender coded, like high performance culture. That's a very kind of like man thing, man phrase. If you think about how it's used for the folks at home who don't really like haven't really heard gender coded language before in this context, like just give us a second or give us like the high level of that. Like what is that? How do you avoid it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I mentioned earlier too that usually people don't even realize that they're doing it. But when it comes to gender coding in job descriptions, it's essentially phrases or tones that signal that a job is more for men than it is for women. Um, and by doing so, you're almost discouraging certain people to apply for roles. Things like assertive or competitive or high performance, high pressure, um, fearless, or when we say things like a rock star or like we're looking for a ninja rock star, whatever person for this role. So almost like a more alpha type
Mm.
description and coded language versus what is considered to be feminine coded language. So something that is more compassionate and supportive or caring type. Yeah, it's it's one of those things where I'm sure you've heard it before, but women are less likely to apply for certain roles if they have certain language associated with them, or if they don't meet all the criteria, whereas men are more likely to go ahead and apply for those roles, regardless of whether or not they might feel that they're qualified for it. So it's in a subtle way shaping and controlling who is more likely to apply for jobs.
Huh. I feel like we could I feel like we could do a whole episode on that.
We
That's
totally could. We totally could, yeah. But it's in there. It's subtle, or for others who maybe have more knowledge about it, it's quite obvious, but it's definitely in there.
yeah. Let's move on to the next section of
Of
the job
course.
post. So the next section is, in this role, you will, bullet points again, utilize best practices and tools from across the industry to ensure the highest standards of service are being delivered in all prospect and customer interactions. Monitor interactions across various lines of business to assess quality of engagement and process compliance. Implement mechanisms to track and ensure compliance with quality process requirements, call scoring, and calibration. Drive investigative projects that identify opportunities to improve behaviors, processes, procedures, tools, training, and outcomes. Collaborate across sales and sales operations stakeholders to implement and ensure accountability in quality programs. Leverage large language models, LLMs, Excel, Google Sheets, Tableau, and similar tools to analyze data and derive actionable insights. Deliver data-driven insights on the quality of sales team engagements across all segments, regions, and industries. And champion, role model, and embed, company name omitted,
Mhm.
cultural principles, focus on customer success, build for the long term, adopt a growth mindset, be inclusive, win as a team, brackets, as we scale globally and across new offices. A lot of words in there too. What did you think?
There's lots of language that speaks to the level of the role. Like we'd mentioned, this is a senior level role. And I think that a lot of the language is reflected there. There is drive, implement, champion, role model. So I think that that's great. I think that that is showing a certain level of expectation, performance at a certain level. To me, that matches the senior level. It's a big job. They're doing a lot. They're doing a lot.
Yeah. And that, that's one of the things that stuck out for me too. Not to, kind of derail your train of thought, but the one thing that really stuck out for me in this section was the part about implementing and ensuring accountability across stakeholders.
Yeah.
And I'm big on accountability and ownership of certain things, but I have a question here. This is an analyst job. Why are you putting something on an analyst's plate that is really meant for kind of a leadership function?
Yeah.
Like leaders help ensure accountability, right? Like to some extent, you have to have either you have to have authority to ensure accountability, whether it's
Yes.
moral authority or whether it's authority granted by title, seniority, like contractual authority, whatever. We're basically saying to a lowly analyst, make sure that people, especially people who may be more senior than you, are doing their darn jobs.
Yeah.
That's a bit problematic for me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a conversation that also appeared on a Substack thread about, whether or not when we tell people that they're accountable for something, do they actually have the levers in place
Mhm.
to be accountable? This person is reporting to a senior manager, they're a senior analyst. It's interesting that they would be accountable for certain things and not the senior manager. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that they had be inclusive in there as well, but I feel like that requires a lot more context. But yeah, I agree. I think that it's a big ask. This job is a big ask. And it seems to be that there's a bit of a clash between like the role of the analyst and having to be accountable for those things that you mentioned. There's a bit of a mismatch there for sure.
Especially in a structured environment. Like
Yeah.
it strikes me that this company is, and this company is fairly large for kind of context. I looked them up on LinkedIn and they have, they've got 10,000 employees, give or
Oh,
take. On LinkedIn, they've got like 500,000 followers, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot of followers. Okay, I've never heard of them before, but cool. Uh, so this is a fairly large structured organization, but they've got that mismatch kind of there. I don't know about that. Let's move.
actually,
Yeah,
so just to go back on that, it also makes me wonder how many of this role already exists. Is this like a net new role? Is this one of several senior
oh
sales
yeah,
analysts? Like, what is their organizational structure like? That's interesting too, and I feel like that's also lacking in a lot of job postings. Just like letting people know you will be one of 5 senior sales something analysts, but or this will be you will be the only person in this role. I think that's important context for people to
yeah.
understand what they're going to be working with and how, again, how the system is going to support them in achieving these pretty ambitious goals.
That's a great point because if you think about a large organization and if this role is embedded in different groups or
Yeah.
teams, then you could kind of think like, oh, okay, so there are 5 people who are kind of doing the same job across different teams.
Yeah.
There's the opportunity for them to come together and form like a little bit of a council to coordinate
Yeah.
their processes and like the tools that they're building, the metrics, the KPIs, whatever, to evaluate kind of impact performance, and they can coordinate their efforts to ensure accountability, even though I think that's still a little
Absolutely.
bit problematic. Like, imagine you had one senior sales analyst who is ensuring accountability one way, and then another one in another group doing it completely differently, right?
Absolutely.
That's going to be
Absolutely.
weird.
And I'm really curious too, as we go through the rest of this job description. In my head, I'm putting a price, like a cost to this role, and what I think the salary could be based on language, right?
Ooh.
Like when I'm creating salary bands in organizations, I'm thinking about the core competencies, the level of experience, and a lot of that has to do with language. When you say implement, the price tag goes up. When you
Mhm.
say drive, the price tag goes up. So I'm very curious, one, as to whether or not the salary is listed, and what that salary is. So I'm getting more excited.
And I'm going to ask you what you think that number is in like 2 sections.
Oh no. Okay. More pressure.
Okay, next section. Minimum requirements for the role.
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah. Bullet points, obviously. 4+ years of sales, comma, enablement, comma, operations, comma, quality, comma, management consulting, comma, or program management experience. Ideally in a SaaS, software as a service for the folks at home, environment, or fast-paced IT consulting role.
Okay.
Proven track record launching transformational quality projects that measurably increase team productivity and customer outcomes. Ability to ramp up quickly on business priorities and derive insights from data. Excel at building trust and communicating effectively with a wide variety of stakeholders, including account reps, managers, and technical roles. Poise under pressure when working through issues in a fast-paced environment, and strong attention to detail and a knack for process improvement and documentation. What did you think of that section?
So that's interesting to me that they're saying 4 years. 4 years is not a lot of years. And then at a like senior on top of that is interesting to me. I think that there's a little bit of a delta between what somebody can accomplish in those 4 years and what they're asking for in the job description. That's not to say somebody can just stop, like that would stop someone from applying. But 4 years is not a lot of time to get all of that experience under your belt that they're asking for. So yeah, curious to hear what you think. What stood out to you?
Yeah, so this, when I read this section, I, I did read this beforehand. Jennifer's really the only one in the conversation that just got this dropped on them. So I've got the benefit of having read this before we started taping this episode. Um, what do I think? That this section really kind of blew me out of the water a little bit, because what they're asking for in this section is a management consultant. So they're saying, hey, um, senior sales performance analyst, like data heavy role, like
Yeah.
person who is really is really kind of like looking at numbers, generating insights, and giving presentations. You should also be a management consultant, by the way, and you need a proven track record of being a management consultant to even get in the door. And by the way, you also need to be leading change management. You need to tell us, and like presumably in the interview, tell us how you've been successful in change management. And back to your comment on, the price tag goes up for implementation. Absolutely. Change management is
Yeah.
gnarly and it's big. And, people who are really good at change management, consultants that do change management professionally for a living, like their hourly rates are up there.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
these folks are asking for an analyst who used to be a management consultant specializing in change management. That's a very rare person.
who reports to a senior mentor. I can't even remember what the title is of the person that they report to, but like,
Yeah, they're not even reporting to someone who's up the leadership
yeah,
hierarchy in a structured organization. Like it's, this would be, I would say that what is what was the title of that manager? Senior manager of go-to-market quality programs within the revenue operations department. So yeah, like that would be like a line level manager. Like
yeah.
that's not senior leadership. It's not even like intermediate leadership.
And that manager probably doesn't have the authority or autonomy or the levers to hold people accountable either, right? So expecting the person who reports into them to have that accountability is is odd.
Yeah. Yeah. Also listing under the minimum requirements for the role, poise under pressure when working through issues in a fast-paced environment. Um, okay, like that's a good skill for anybody to have, if they're
Yes.
working in the
Yeah.
organization, especially if your role is going to kind of touch on consulting and client service. Like, yeah, you need that. But I read that, and the first thing that pops into mind is you're going to get yelled at a lot.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly what I thought too. When it's explicitly noted in a job description, then there's a reason for that. I saw a job posting for an HR role, and the first bullet point of responsibilities was something about very experienced in workplace investigations. And so, what does that tell you? There are a lot of workplace investigations there, which also tells me that there are a lot of issues there, right? Like it, it goes deep, and so you can't just take it for face value. Those bullet points are telling a story. They're telling you a story, and if it's important enough for them to mention it as a requirement, um, and where they place it in the list as well, then you should be paying attention to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting because like for anybody who's looking for a job, and they're going through all of this stuff, they're looking at those bullet points and being like, this is a story. Do I really want to work with an organization that lists out like A, B, or C? From the other side of it, from the organizational side, the person writing the job description, I wonder if there is like an opportunity to kind of do this a little bit better and be like, we want this particular set of skills because of X or Y or Z. Like if I was putting on
Yes.
my kind of organizational branding hat, um, with that investigations thing, I would be saying something to the effect of, we want someone who's really experienced in investigations because as an organization, we value people, we value inclusivity, we value equality, and we want to make sure that we have the right processes in place
Yes.
structurally to make sure that like bad stuff doesn't happen.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I think a because is huge. And job descriptions just don't tell the story the way that they should. They tell a story, but they're not telling the full
Yeah.
story. And again, this conversation is from a place of privilege, right? Like if you need to apply for a job and the job posting is riddled with red flags, then you apply for that job, right? but at the same time, it's so important to know what you're going into and to prepare yourself for that, to prepare your nervous system for what you're going to be walking into. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next section.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, there's more. An ideal candidate also has bullet points, experience working with Gong and or Salesforce, project management or industry certifications, for example, COPC, PMP, and then not in bullet points. The range of annual base salary for full-time employees for this position is below. Please note that base pay offered may vary depending on factors including your city or residence, job-related knowledge, skills, and experience. All right, this is where you're super going on the hot seat. What did you think the range for this was?
So there's what I think it's going to be and what I think it should be based on what they're asking.
Give me both numbers. Ah,
I I feel like I'm gonna predict that they're saying like 65,000 or something like that. That's what I'm predicting. What I
okay.
think it should be is, oh my gosh, minimum 85 minimum. So I'm not giving a range here. I'm just saying kind of what I think. So really curious if I'm wrong. Again, you said this was based in Canada, but serving North America and Europe.
So this is a remote role.
Remote role.
The company, I believe, is American. So we're talking about a branch office, and they have clients in North America and Europe.
Okay. So maybe I'm a little bit low on that. Maybe it is 85 ish. And I do think that it should be at a starting point significantly higher for what they're asking for based on experience, and everything should be like in six figures. But I'm going to say they're probably offering like 85-ish.
Okay, drum roll, please. The range that they posted on the job description on LinkedIn, 94,350 to 122,100 CAD.
Okay. I'm happily surprised.
Yep. And let's talk about them putting the salary range on there at all. I
Yeah.
always consider that a positive thing.
Yes. It is a positive thing. I mean, it's legal requirement more and more in Canada, and many states in the US. So it is becoming the norm. I think that like gone are the days of not having a salary band. I think it's inexcusable to not have a salary band. That's just
Mhm.
my opinion.
Okay. So the rest of this section, which kind of rounds out, the job posting, at company name omitted, we welcome everyone regardless of their background. All qualified applicants will receive consideration for employment without regard to race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, protected veteran status, disability, age, and other characteristics protected by law. We depend on the unique approaches of our team members to help us solve complex problems and want to ensure that, company name omitted, is a place where people from all backgrounds can make an impact. Benefits. Full-time employees receive a competitive total compensation package along with employee-led remote and flexible working, health benefits, and much, much more. Take a look at our benefits site to learn more, and there's a link out. Accommodations. I almost said the company name. We'll just company omitted that one. Is an inclusive work environment, and we are committed to ensuring equal opportunity in employment for qualified persons with disabilities. Please email, then there's an email address, or click here if you require any reasonable accommodations throughout the recruiting process. What did you think about that section?
Yeah, I think that's pretty par for the course. I think that you should always have an accommodations statement. Yeah, I don't see, nothing stood out to me. What is something standing out to you?
Yeah, and for me, this this kind of stuff, the rest of the job post, I think is really just boilerplate that's been
Yeah,
developed over time, in partnership with in-house counsel or
yeah, it
something like
is.
to really, yeah, to kind of put the stuff that you need. I did like that, and I don't know if we can give them credit for having a section about accommodations because I think that it is a legal requirement in some
Yeah.
U.S. states. And after reading that, and where they said veteran status was a characteristic protected by law, I don't think that's the case in Canada. I don't think that veteran status is a protected class here.
I'm not, I actually don't know. There's certain differences, like in US job postings, they can ask those questions to yeah, like are you a veteran, and
Yeah,
race, like gender, race, all of those types of things. In Canada, that is not a typical practice. I see
yeah.
it if there are jobs that are across North America that will be added, but when it's like a Canadian specific job, then that's not seen.
There's
Yeah,
one more section.
there's
Flexible working.
more.
One more. Flexible working at company name omitted. We embrace a flexible working model that caters to the diverse needs of our teams. Our offices are open for those who prefer to work in person, and we also support remote work where it aligns with our operational requirements. For certain positions, being close to one of our offices or within a specific geographic region is important to facilitate collaboration, access to resources, or alignment with our service regions. In these cases, the job description will clearly indicate any working location requirements. Our goal is to ensure that all members of our team can contribute effectively, whether they are working on site, in a hybrid model, or fully remotely. All offers of employment are contingent upon an individual's ability to secure and maintain the legal right to work at the company and in the specified work location, if applicable. What did you think about that?
I think that sounds to me as though they're being as flexible as they can be. They're kind of embracing different work styles. And it sounds like they're an organization where for some roles, it's just not going to be possible to have that kind of flexibility. So yeah, that makes sense to me. That sounds good.
Yeah, I read through that, and when I first read flexible working, I was thinking kind of through that framework of this is a fringe benefit. If you need to, flex 3 hours out for an appointment or something and work that 3 hours later, that's cool. We've got a process for that. Like it's kind of institutionalized practice, so you're all good. Whereas
Yeah.
with a lot of organizations, it's more informal. If you've got a good manager, like sure you can do it.
Yes.
Uh, but then reading through it, it was more like, oh, okay, it's not really that. It's more so you can work, offsite
Yes.
if it works for the job, which fine, I get that. But that felt a little bit more kind of legally than a
Yeah.
benefit for the employee.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that there's flexible work arrangements to me, and from what I'm familiar with, really mean where you're working, not how you're working. But it should mean something. It should be like a bigger picture of what it's like to work there. But yeah, no, I totally get where there's confusion for that.
Yeah. So if you were going to give this job posting in its like entirety,
Yeah.
a score from like 1 to 10, what would you score this?
Well, so let's talk about the pros are I was happily surprised with the salary range. First, that it was posted at all, and also that it was higher than what I thought it was going to be. But I think that adds to the confusion of the reporting structure. So while I think the
Mhm.
salary range is good, um, I think that they might run into some issues with that reporting structure. And I'd love to know what their org structure and the org chart, everything hierarchy looks like at that organization. Strike against it is to me what felt like really gender coded language and a little bit of a mismatch between, like you said, all this different experience management, consultant, change management, all of those things, project management, certifications, things like that. Again, the price tag goes up and up and up with all of those. And I don't know that the experience that they're asking for reflects someone's ability to even gain that amount of experience. And there's a bit of an iffy thing with the title itself for me. So I don't think it's terrible. I actually thought you were going to spring something on me that was like really like, those ones that you're just who approved this. But this feels really standard to me. There's nothing too wild or extreme in my opinion. So I would probably give them like 7, maybe a 6 or a 7, and just more storytelling, more honesty, and yeah, just kind of look around the corner. What are some issues that might come up based on the type of person this would attract, the reporting structure, and things like that? What about you?
Mhm.
What's your score?
Lower. No, I love that you said, hey, I thought that I was going to drop an absolute nightmare crazy one on you, and we should actually do that sometime. That'd be a
I know.
lot
I
of
was
fun.
going to say, can we do this more? Can we do this again, please?
All right,
And I would drop one on you where you won't know that it's one that I wrote.
Ooh,
Yes,
oh,
that's a good idea. And see,
that sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, we should do this again. Yeah, we should
yes,
definitely do this again. Okay, what did I score this? I scored this, and I'm not really scoring the job posting with this score. I'm more scoring what the posting has told me about the job.
right.
And I'm scoring it like a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's the reason that I'm scoring it that way, is more specifically because of that weird mismatch. Like there's with this job posting in its entirety, there's really a few things that stick out for me. Like, oh, that's not going to go so well.
yes,
The first one is you have a hierarchical reporting relationship that seems to exist where a peer is reporting to a peer.
yes,
You've got senior
absolutely.
people reporting to senior people, and that's kind of weird. That's the first one that kind of throws out a red flag for me. The second point that throws out a red flag for me with this one, the second thing that kind of stands out for me is the accountability part.
Yes,
So
yes,
you have an analyst who's being tasked with creating the the systems, the processes, and the accountability. So to kind of phrase this another way, like you're telling someone to be judge, jury, and executioner,
yeah,
and member of parliament, like they're making the rules too, right? That's going to be weird, especially inside that reporting dynamic where you've got kind of like hierarchical peers in a direct reporting relationship. What if the manager actually has responsibilities that fall into the accountability framework that their
yes,
subordinate is then expected to go and enforce? That's not going to go well for anybody. That's going to be incredibly toxic incredibly quickly, unless the
absolutely.
manager is like this superstar who can do everything and do it
An
really well.
enlightened human being and who doesn't mind
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, and doesn't
Absolutely.
mind their subordinate being like, "Yo, you dropped the ball on that one."
Yeah. And let's be honest, that's just not something that you see very often, right? Like
Rare.
that's yeah. It would be so cool for job postings to have a link that you can click on that takes you to your manager's job description, right?
Uh,
So that you can say, so this job is
yeah,
reporting to this person. Click on it. Here's their job description so that you can really understand how those things work together, where
yeah,
there's overlap, where there might be gaps. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that would be really telling as well.
Yeah, yeah, it would be. And to kind of further on your point, where, are you one person doing this job, or are you like one of many across an organization doing the same job? Like understanding the dynamics with the org unit that you're going to be in, seeing those job postings, seeing those like accountability and ownership structures of the work, super valuable.
Absolutely.
Especially if you think about that context of like, okay, there's 1,000 people applying for a job potentially. um are they applying for a job because they think it might be a good fit and they're desperate and they're just like playing the numbers game? And like that creates some stress on the org. Would that number be less if the person applying had that added context? Like would they be
Right.
able to then say, oh, this is for me, or oh, this ain't for me? Like that structure is weird, I can't do that. And
Yeah.
then they wouldn't bother and they wouldn't waste people's time. Like
Yeah,
maybe that would
absolutely.
be better.
I have a question for you, actually.
Yeah.
If you were the candidate, if this
Mm.
was kind of your jam and you felt like you were qualified to apply for this role, how would you differentiate yourself? Like based on the job posting, you get like insights into the culture and into like pattern language and things like that via job posting, or at least like you should. Um, yeah, how would you differentiate yourself in this market? This is a remote position, so it's very competitive. What would you do to stand out as a candidate?
Wow, what would I do? If I were applying for a role like this, I think that I would try and differentiate myself by value added action around the application. Like a
Mhm.
lot of it doesn't matter what it is, if it's business, if it's like professional. even if it's personal in some respects. Like a mantra that I kind of try and live by is do what others aren't always.
Yeah.
So I would kind of apply that to what this is. Like, yes, apply for the job, but then go a step of trying to figure out like who the key people are. Like you've got job titles there, right? So maybe you can find them on LinkedIn. Maybe you can figure out where they are. Can you like send them, I don't know, a video or a letter or something that's like, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. You know, I applied for this job. This is just a little bit more about me. This is kind of like our personal connection sort of thing. I try things like that, but I'm maybe not the best person to kind of like rely on because I haven't applied for a job through a job board in 20 years. And it's not
Yeah.
because I had like different jobs. It's because I've never liked playing that numbers game.
Yes.
So I've always done weird stuff to get jobs, and it's always been more
Uh-oh.
networking.
Uh-oh. No, I know what you mean. And I do think that kind of the way of the future is being outside of the box about how you apply. Like just throwing your hat in a ring with a whole bunch of other people is, it doesn't get you as far as it used to.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think you have to go above and beyond. If it's a job that you're really interested in, resumes can all kind of sound and look the same. They're going to.
Mhm.
You're applying for the same job. They should kind of look the same. But how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself? Can you reach out to someone? Maybe it's someone on the HR team. Maybe it's the job poster. Maybe it's find the manager who this person is reporting to, and
Yeah.
make a connection there. Leave a voice note, something like that. I just think that's helpful for people to know that it really doesn't work as much anymore to just apply for a job and hope for the best. So unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's a lot more than that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I love that you said let's do this again sometimes. Let's absolutely do this again sometime.
for
But
sure.
for today, we will wrap up. Jennifer Houle, author of Uncompliant on Substack. If you don't subscribe, my God, just go there and like mash the button to subscribe. I do. It's a fantastic newsletter.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on the show, and I look forward to our next chat.
Absolutely. Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Journey in Conversation. If you liked this episode, follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. More builders, more breakthroughs, coming soon.